The ladder of success is typically climbed rung by rung. And when another rung presents itself, you grab and you climb. But at what risk? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because, as you'll hear from my guest and your host, there can be some serious repercussions.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Gary Tilkin was a sought-after, internationally known educator, speaker, and facilitator. And this made Gary a very requested speaker. And as with most professional speakers, his reward was being on the road 300 plus days a year, overnight and out of shape, and other issues I'll let him talk about. He's currently writing a book titled Being Average Works Nicely. And I'm grateful to have him on the show. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate being here. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, it has been. Before we hit record on this podcast, Gary and I were catching up for a minute because it's probably been 20 years or so since we spoke. But we definitely bumped into each other because I don't want to crowd the topic, but this is a topic that I know about well, just like you. But Gary, you got me beat. 300 plus. My biggest years were 250, 255 plus. But I got a good taste of what that was about. And so when I saw Gary post something on LinkedIn, and I immediately reached out and I said, gosh, I'd love to have him on the show because it's a topic we don't talk about. It's the instinct is to climb. And I don't know about you, but I never got a lesson on when to let go of the ladder rung and let that one be. To drop back a rung. That was never on my hit list. Mine was if it's there, go snap it up, go pull yourself up. So, this is going to be an interesting topic for a lot of people because, like I said, we don't usually talk about not necessarily going backwards, but how high up the ladder you want to go. And so let's talk about it. How did we get here? Let's go to the beginning. You're the man when it comes to, there's rarely do I have a guy who traveled more than I did. But how did we get here to this day? Just catch us up a little bit.
Well, I think what you're asking me is what brought us together, which was a mutual client who had us come together, and I was over there, and I was I was actually in charge of all their facilitators, and I was their main facilitator, and I got to meet you, and I'm sure it's okay to say that it was in the Xerox Training Center, and that really impressed me. We were there. Great experience. But prior to that, I always wanted to do what I did. I always wanted to help people. So at the very beginning of my career, I wasn't very successful in sales. And I thought that what you needed was you just needed a great personality and then people will gravitate to you. But what I found out was great personalities will take you just so far. What you need to have is you need to have some structure, and your mind has to work in such a way, and you have to truly listen to what somebody else is saying and understand their point of view. Now, how did we get here? Well, once I got training myself, I got better. And I said, I want to do that. And that drove me over 35, 40 years. And early on in my life, I started my own company and I just applied what people like you taught me and other people taught me. And it worked out nicely. And I'm not, the title of my book is accurate. I'm just kind of average, but I found that, average people tend to do things that above average people wish they did, but we're just so happy for the smallest amount of success. So that's where it took us. And then it took me through clients and time and all the pitfalls of owning your own company. And then it took me to later on in life, right before I retired.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that part. Mm-hmm. But, what's interesting is we've lived, in a sense, parallel lives. We're roughly the same age. Yeah. We had careers that, in a sense, found us. We were, and of course, I've never conceded that I'm an average guy, but I'll concede the fact that I'd like to think that I'm an average person that attempted to do extraordinary things, at least tried. and I don't know where that put me on the scale, but as a basketball player, I was too small. Football player, I was too light. Even I fooled people to think I was fast. I was quick. I wasn't fast. If you get the difference there.
Well, let me clarify for you. I think I think it's important that you understand where I'm coming from.
Good.
And it really is it's the essence of what I was writing, which, by the way, was therapy for me. And we can talk about that later.
Yes.
But early on in my life, I wasn't a really great student, to the point where my reading skills were terrible. They were awful. And they put me through special classes. And then they talked about, maybe Gary's a little bit behind times, and we'll put him into this class and that class. And then in about, I think it was 5th grade, they gave us one of those tests where they test your mathematical skills. And remember, I'm not the person that they expected to score even close to well, but I scored the best in the school, and they thought I cheated. So they made me take it again. And when I took it again, I scored better than I did the first time. So they called my mother in, and they said, we're upset. And my mom said, what did he do now? I said, what he did was, he's been snowing us. He is not putting forth the effort because he's bored. And so they put me in, top classes, and they really forced me. And I learned something from that experience, and that's what happened for the rest of my life. But I mean, people were treating me like I wasn't very smart. So you start to get a psyche that maybe you're not very smart, maybe you're pretty average. But what ended up happening was, we all have something that we're really great at. We might not know what it is early on, but we figure it out really quick. And when we do, we have to go with it. And it's right when you enjoy doing it more than anything else that you do. And so that's why I consider myself to be rather average. And that's the way people looked at me. And I'm happy to be where I am today, no problem. But I think that people just have to find what their thing is, and then really do it to the best of their ability, and then make sure you enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate gift is love what you do and do what you love. And at the risk of too much information, I did find, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I'm going with it. I found on a website 15 years ago a pair of underwear that says around the band, do what you love and love what you do. And if you ever see me on the way out to a trip, guess what I'm wearing?
You're wearing the underwear.
I'm wearing that underwear. I'll tell you something else that's interesting about us. Whereas I said, we're the same guy. We're living, we got a parallel existence here. I was brought up, I have 2 wonderful parents. I was very blessed and very lucky. And they told me, boy, you can do anything you set your mind to. You are the guy. And I was the youngest in the family, and I tried really hard. So I actually imagine us sitting side by side taking that test that you took. The first time I was actually publicly tested, my scores were much lower than anybody had anticipated. I believed that I was much smarter than I don't know if smart's the wrong word, but that I had more skills than I had. Now, I remember being somewhat shocked, as were my parents, and they retested me. And at least I didn't get labeled, this guy's holding the back on you. Yeah. This guy's giving you everything he's got, and then some. We don't know how he's getting half these answers. But the good news for me was, what do they say? That old saying, if you believe it, it can be true. I actually believed I was the smartest guy in the room. Now, once I learned maybe I'm not the smartest guy, I then believed that I can out hustle anybody else in this room. And that's where I began to move forward. And when you live a life as a professional speaker and you're out there facilitating, a lot of what we're doing is just reading, reacting, improv, hustle. But it's not like we're walking up there. Yeah, I have an agenda and we're going to follow a path. But it's stone to stone. How we get from one stone to the other, that's going to depend on this room today. But that's how it served me. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Yeah. That reminds me of a great quote, and I'm not going to get it right. I'm going to paraphrase. Senator Bill Bradley, who was with the New York Knickerbockers, which shows me, because if I call them New York Knickerbockers and they call the Knicks today, you know how old I am.
Well, I saw that team and watched them play. I know exactly where you're going. Keep going.
Yeah, I lived there. I got to watch him too. Back then, before, when he went through all that and he became a senator, he said, I'm good. If I find somebody who has equal abilities, even somebody who has better abilities, but I practice more than you do, then quite frankly, I'm going to beat you. And
Right.
that's a paraphrase. And I always kind of live by that, saying, if you just get yourself prepared, if you do more preparation than you really need, I don't mean memorize things. I think that's a fallacy. I think you need to just have, you just have to feel comfortable with yourself and your knowledge. Then all of a sudden you come across very confident, and you can let people, talk, and you can react off of them. And the one thing that's really hard, it was enormously hard, I was thinking about it today, to teach is you need to think. You just don't need to respond. You need to think. So give yourself a moment to think. Think through the answer that you want to give. It'll be appreciated. So that's the basic philosophy. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. One quick Knicks piece. I was so into that team that there was a player also named Dick Barnett on that team.
Oh, sure.
And his jump shot, if you remember, he had sort of an unusual kick when he went into the air. Guess what? 9-year-old Rob Jollis was doing jump
Chicken.
shots and infuriating everybody who's playing with me because I was kicking people. I wasn't doing it intentionally, but I was sort of doing my Dick Barnett. All right, let me move off of that. I also agree with something else you said. I tell people, in real estate, it's location, location, location. In what we do, it's preparation, preparation, preparation.
Yeah.
That's when people see us and they say, gee, you don't look that anxious. And, well, if I'm prepared, you won't see me that anxious. Now, we get thrown into the same boiler everybody else does, and we trust our instincts. But I'm really, it's silly to say, a fan of preparation, but I don't want to write it out. I just want to be prepared. And then everything calms down. Then we get to our authentic self, which is what we're desperately trying to do. I just really want you to meet Rob. I just really want you to meet Gary today. I think you're going to like him. It's if we're anxious and we're distracted, we can't get at that authentic self. So that's where the preparation comes in. Okay, so let's go to your writing a little bit, and I'm interested. A journal helped me while I was in the throes of all that travel, and that sort of woke me up as a writer. Tell me about your journey into writing a little bit.
All right. In order to do that, I'm going to explain to you what occurred. When I was 60 years old, I was out of shape. I just wasn't, health-wise, I wasn't good. And as you know, and people who ever want to do what we did, you think you're a road warrior because you do some crazy stuff. You might stay up a little bit too late. You might, for lots of reasons, not because you're trying to go out and to the bar and drink, but maybe a client wants to take you out after a full day and you have to go out and you have to be just as pumped up as you were when you were in front of that group. So you do things to yourself and you don't realize you're doing it. You just think you are the road warrior, you're it. And you take your health and put it aside a little bit. And it's not the right thing to do. So I had a stroke at age 60, and it kind of woke me up. And I did some things. So first, what did I do? I had some medical things taken care of. I lost some weight. I went to work out and I retired. I said, that's it. How many steaks can I eat? That's it. I'm done. My wife said, you're kind of bored. You should write. You had an interesting life. You should write something. Started as a journal. And she didn't think I'd take her advice. I did. That's where it came from. Now, as I'm writing, I'm saying to myself, what do I want to write about? Because I don't think I'm that interesting. And I said, I want to write about things that happened to me, like really early on, memories that we have, and how that affected the way I live the rest of my life. And that is the crux of the book. Now, I'd like to share a story with you so the people who are listening kind of get a feel for this, because if they can do the same thing, they'll start feeling more rejuvenated at where they are now, that they got here for a reason. So early on, when I probably was 2 years old, my mother, I lived in Long Island, New York. My mom and dad were divorced. So I lived with my mom and we didn't have much. And so she took me to the drugstore to get some. Back then, the drugstore was like a mini CVS. Just it had some toys, it had some candy, and it had drugs. You went into the drugstore. It's a family operated thing. And I used to love to go because I had a favorite candy and it was called a Fireball. You remember
I
fireballs?
love the fireballs.
Yeah,
I was a
right. I mean,
fireball man. Oh
oh my
yeah, I
God,
know the
yes.
fireballs. Keep
So
going.
I said to my mom, hey, mom, can I get a fireball? And I remember back then you could get 2 for a penny. Okay,
Yeah.
try to do that now. So she said no. And I said, okay. And I took 4 and stuck them in my pocket. And I went home and I was proud of myself. Remember, I'm only 2. And
You're
so I'm home.
2?
I'm
You're
2.
eating fireballs at 2?
Yes. Yes, I
Good
was.
heavens. We are
I know.
talking to an extraordinary guest. Keep going.
So we get home and I take the fireballs out and I'm happy. And I show it to my mom. And I said, look, I'd have the fireballs. She said, oh, really? And she spanked me and she put me back in the car and she made me go back to the drugstore. And she made me hand the fireballs, crying, hand the fireballs back to the owner. And he said, oh, let him keep it. No, he stole them. Then we went back home and she spanked me again. Now I'm 2. Now I remember at this time where I'm going with this, and I want you to see what happened then, how it can affect you in a really positive way. I was 55. I was working for a client. At the end of the week, the client gave me a check. I got the check. I went home. 2 weeks later, the same client sent me the same check. So now I'm looking at this and it's a lot of money. And I'm saying, ooh, this would be easy to keep. They'll never figure this out. That's what my brain's saying. And then I thought, fireballs. And I said, okay. And I'm going to say this as transparently as I can. It would have been really easy to keep that money. And it was a lot of money. And I said, I have to call that client right now and tell him I'm Federal Expressing that check back. Because if I don't, the more I keep this check, the more I look at it, then I'll lose myself. I'll lose who I am as a person. So I called the client and all I said was one thing. I said, please don't yell at your people. Accidents happen.
Right.
Please.
Right.
Well, he said, thank you. And he was my client for years after that. I mean, he was my client years before, but years after that too. And he liked me because I was straight up, just like that. And yeah, he sent an email to his people and yelled at them. So I didn't protect his people, but those kinds of situations happen to us. And when they do, I immediately will respond because of what my mom did early on. And so that's why you respond the way you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. As I listen to that story, I just want people who are hearing it, who are kind of have an eyebrow in the air and say, I'd never do that. I would keep that. I would send that check back. I wouldn't be tempted to keep the check. We've all had situations like that. And Gary, I've had them too. And it took me a day and a half to send the check back because I needed to think about it just a minute more. And that's embarrassing to tell you, but I just want you to understand how I appreciate the fact that that's a more challenging issue than people think. And let's spice it up a little bit. Let's not have such a good year. Let's be a little bit behind on some bills. It's funny how the brain can justify and say, well, I've done so much work anyway. I mean, we'll create a scenario that eventually will fit the situation. But at the end of the day, you took the fireballs. And even though they were only worth 2 pennies, the bigger picture was you took something that wasn't yours. And whether it's 2 cents or a healthier check you're describing, it's actually the exact same issue. And because what are we going to do? Put a dollar amount and say, well, if it's below this number, you're allowed to keep it. You either keep something that isn't yours or you don't.
And a real danger. There's
yeah.
a real danger here.
Yeah.
When you do something like that, and this was the biggest fear I had. It wasn't that you didn't need the money. Of course you can use the money. But the issue is once you go down that path, it's so easy to go down a second and third and fourth time. And that's how bad things happen.
Yeah.
So
and let's not even play out the scenario of what if we could look into the future. And I Gary, I just was in the future, but it's really nice. There's no more pandemic. It's really great up there. But I noticed that you could take that check and they'll never know. I can guarantee you they'll never know. That's not part of this scenario. It's not whether you could get away with it or not. No. You have to live with that moment. And And anyway, it's just we forget how so much is imprinted on us at a young age. And what I love about the book, and I want to talk about the book now, because what I like about the book, I haven't heard about this yet, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just reading this man's mind, and I'm telling you, I got a sense that in this book we're going to get some more lessons that have come along the way that you're trying to articulate for others. So tell me about that a little bit.
I think what you're asking is maybe let me take you a step back.
Okay. Am I still in the
Back
future?
to my
or am I
mom.
back now.
Yeah, back, because you have to go back to go forward.
Okay.
So anyway, my mom says to me, I need a vacuum cleaner. And so what she did, and think about how this would affect everyone. Remember now, in my life, we didn't have much. So when my friends went to the movies and their moms and dads gave them $5, I couldn't go to the movies because my mom didn't have $5. So she needed a vacuum cleaner. She was a neat freak. She came from a time when being neat and organized was very important. So she wanted to get the best vacuum cleaner she could get. So she went to Consumer Reports, which was the Google of years ago without the computer. And she found that Electrolux was the best vacuum cleaner, also the most expensive. And so we went to an Electrolux store. And when we went to the store, she went in and she found out how much they cost. And she said, well, I can't afford that. And so the man behind the counter, who was a sales consultant, said, hey, we have some factory refurbished ones. Now, I was probably 7 or 8, but I didn't like this guy. There was something about him, whether it was a facial tic or the way his eyes were moving or what he was saying or how he was saying it, there was something about him I just didn't buy. But I didn't say anything. I didn't verbalize it. And so my mom got sold a bill of goods, and she got this Electrolux vacuum cleaner that never worked right for 2.5 years. And at the end of 2.5 years, she saved up her money. She went back to a different store and she bought a new one. Now think about that just for a second. Now move forward. My mom taught us that you just have to wait. If you want something nice, you can get it. Just wait. Be patient. Study. Make sure it's really what you want. So that's what we did. We waited. My wife and I, when we got married, again, didn't have anything. Like everybody else when you first get married. All we wanted was a couch. You waited 1.5 years to get a couch. What we had was a lazy boy chair from college, a drum set because I played drums from the time I was 5, and a bed. And that's it. Then we bought our first couch. And believe me when I tell you, we took care of that couch because it was white, a white couch. I remember. So look how that experience that my mom did by making a mistake and her waiting years before she would ever go and do it again and saving her money. How does that affect somebody later on in life?
Yeah.
There's no way I could have retired, Rob. There's no way I could have retired if I hadn't had that philosophy in life.
Right. Huh. I want to go back one and forward one. When I go back, as you were talking, and we were talking about your story of, I'm still hung up on your story of the fireballs.
Yeah.
And because it's a story of integrity.
Yeah.
It really is. And I used to do, and I think I'm going to put it back into one of my programs. I forgot I had it. I used to do an exercise about integrity because I knew everyone was like, "Oh, I'm a person of integrity." I'm sure you are, but there's a line. I go, "No, I have no line." Well, okay, maybe there isn't. But now this was some years ago when there were payphones. But I used to say, "Well, okay, so you're on a payphone. You put a quarter in, you make a phone call. That's what it used to cost, folks. Actually, it cost a dime at one point, I think, maybe
That's
a
right,
nickel.
a dime.
But let's stay with a quarter.
Okay.
But you put that quarter in and you make a call, you hang up, and a quarter falls out. Are you mailing that quarter back to the phone company? My guess is not only you're not, but the first phrase out of your mouth would be, they've got more money than anybody, than the whole world practically. Why would I? But that's not your quarter. So now that's an extreme, but there's one line, right? I last line, but for right now, you're listening, for those who are listening, you can't see it, but I'm holding up a pen. And I had a Mont Blanc pen that was given to me by a class one time. And I loved that pen. It meant the world to me, particularly from who gave it to me. And one time I was in the library, I left it, came back an hour later, it was gone. And I was sad. And about a month later, I was I was in the airport. I was sitting down and I got ready to get up, and there was a Mont Blanc pen sitting there. And guess what was going on in my brain? I deserve this. Somebody took mine. Well, no one's here. I think this belongs to me. And once again, it was the same thing of, no, it doesn't. And no matter how you try and justify this, of yours got taken, now you take someone else. That's the line. So to me, integrity is always about doing the right thing, whether people know it or not. That's one of the reasons why, although I'm a terrible golfer, I do like golf, because you're challenged by that little integrity line a lot on the golf course.
For sure you are. You know, it's funny you tell that story about Mont Blanc pens. I'm gonna roll back here and I'm gonna pull something from here because, like I said, we do have stories.
I'll describe what's going on. He's rolling back right now. He's got something in his hand. It looks like a box. It is a box. Okay. Yep. He's opening the box, and oh my goodness, it's a box of beautiful, amazing pens. Turns out Gary's a pen collector. Okay.
Now the point is how you said we were tied in different ways and we have similar. Okay. I was in the Jewish religion, you get bar mitzvah. So at 13, I got bar mitzvah, and my present from my mom was a cross pen. It was a cross gold pen.
We all got one. I got one too.
Did you get one too? All right.
Very thin cross gold pen. Sometimes a pencil too, by the way.
Yeah, it was pen and pencil. And I took it to school. I took it to school, and I put it in my we went to the gym, and I put it in my locker. And when I came back, it was stolen. And so I said to myself, if ever there was a time when I can get nice pens, I would get it. So you wonder, why does somebody, a pen collector? It's because of what happened. Now, to go with that, because I know the people the people who are listening to this are highly motivated, and they have to motivate themselves. And that's really the only person that can motivate you anyway. So what I used to do was I used to have a challenge. And if I could make that, whatever it might be a booking challenge, or it might be a financial challenge, or it might be some sort of a challenge in business. And if I got the challenge, I bought a pen. And that's where the pens came from. And every pen has a story. And I remember what I did to get the pen. So now these pens are just not writing instruments. These pens have memories.
Yep.
And so I know what I did to get that. And I know what I did to get
that. Well,
I
got one for you, Gary. When you get your book, when that book comes out, I'm going to tell you that. And again, here, I'll just hit the bell every time Gary and I kind of line up on this. I knew we had a lot in common. I have 6 books. I'm not boasting. I'm just telling you that's the number. Yeah. But every time a book comes out from me, I do something special, something to remember it by. And the chair, I happen to stand when I do podcasts, but the chair that's behind me has a plate in the back of it with the title of my last book. My laptop bag in the corner of my office has a metal plate on it. It's the title of another book of mine. I have little things, and it brings me such joy because they're accomplishments, they're earned, and it's nothing to do with the expense of the item. No. It's being able to look at and go, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah.
That's right.
So when that book comes out, we're looking for about a 1x4 plate. We're going to put the book title on there, and you're attaching it to something. I don't know if we can attach it to a pen, but we're going to attach it to something that will remind you of the journey that you're on. So I want to stay on that journey. Yeah. The lessons in this book, are they going to be from the road? Are they going to be from life? Are they going to be both? Where are all these lessons going to be coming from?
They're going to be coming from, of course, your life. My life, major part of my life was on the road. I mean, that's a lot of years. It's close to 40 years. Uh-huh. But also it's always going to be how what happened to you before got you on to where you are now, and how to keep yourself motivated when you're there. I don't know if you had the same feeling I did, but there's this feeling of fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you're doing this job, especially if you have a bad day, and we can all have bad days, and you should try your best. It's just the chemistry wasn't there, whatever it was, you had a bad day. Now your students, surprisingly enough, they were okay with it, but you didn't want them to be okay with it. You wanted them to be just doing backflips over it. Right. So we just had a bad day. And after a couple of bad days or a bad month, or maybe a client cancels on you, or things aren't looking great, sometimes what I wanted to do was I wanted to jump out. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to go work for someone instead of owning my own company. And I did it once, just once, very early on. And when I did it, I remember there was a gentleman, and I'll even tell you his name. His name was David Cole. And David Cole said to me, Gary, you will never forgive yourself for leaving this position before you were successful. You'll never forgive yourself. And I said, yeah, right. And I went on with my life. And he was right. I remember that like it happened yesterday. So now I own my own business and I'm on the road. And I was on the road back then too, but I'm on the road. And there are times when you just want to just throw in the towel. And all you do is remember about David Cole saying that to you and how it emotionally affected you, where you say, okay, I can make it. All you have to do is make it just one more day, and then 2 days, and then 5 days. Then all of a sudden you forgot about it because everything's working out great for you again.
Yeah.
And so you have to pull in those memories to keep you going today. You also have to be realistic.
Right.
If another gentleman said to me, if the deal's not right, and he was actually talking about his marriage, and I've been married for 42 years, so it's not my marriage. He said, if the deal's not right, get out. But how do you know if it's not right? How do you know? Well, that takes a little bit of thought, and you have to stop justifying. You have to start saying, hey, is this just a momentary lapse? Am I just losing a little confidence right now? Am I good at what I do? Well, who do I have to call? Who has to be in my board of directors to call to say that I'm actually okay at what I do, just to give me a little push? Everybody needs a little help every now and again. And that's what we have to do. And I remember it. It used to happen to me every 2 years.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out,
Right.
but I hung in there. And I suggest the same for other people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
My kids aren't that way.
Yeah. I'll tell you, for me, I almost get nervous when I want to get out, when I want to quit something, because I'm afraid once I open up that Pandora's box,
Yep,
that the next time that voice says quit, and I'm a guy who never, people know me, I don't quit anything. They tease me about it, but I just remind them, I'm hearing the same voice you hear. It's just not as loud because it's not getting anywhere with me. Did you ever see the movie, let me get that. What was that movie called? A Beautiful Mind. There's a wonderful scene. Did you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind?
I remember the movie, yes.
Okay. So there's a tremendous scene in there. He is haunted by his schizophrenia, by his seeing of these people. And right near the end, somebody says, do you still see them? And he says, oh, yeah, I still see them. But they've kind of given up on me and I gave up on them, but they're still here. The gnawing in the mind to give up never goes away, but it loses its power the longer we can stay away from it. So what's fascinating about what you're bringing up to me now is, and it's a challenge of mine personally, is sometimes we are meant to walk away from this. And you can see how some people who are programmed almost compulsively, and again, my hand is in the air, we suffer from, we almost, that's why we have business coaches. That's why we have, I'm married to 30, my wife's going to kill me. 38. I think it's 38. So it's a big number in the 30s, but that's why we have our tribe and our loved ones, because sometimes we need help. And for me, it's always been a challenge as to when the writing's on the wall, am I quitting this or am I making an intelligent decision? Where's that test? That's a tough line. It's tough for me.
I want to stay on that subject for a second.
Yeah.
When I was 5 years old, I saw a gentleman on TV by the name of Buddy Rich. And Buddy Rich was the greatest jazz drummer of all time.
Yeah. I saw Buddy Rich on the Tonight Show a few times.
Oh, many times.
Johnny used to love having him on.
He and Johnny Carson they were like buddies, and he
Mm-hmm.
gave Johnny a set of drums and stuff. Johnny Carson also played the drums pretty well too. So I saw Buddy Rich, and I'm 5. And so I wanted to take drum lessons. Now, 5-year-olds don't take drum lessons. So I went to my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I'd like to take some drum lessons. And she said, well, think about it. Now, that is code for it's not going to happen. So I said, okay, but I really wanted to play drums. So I went and I heard a drummer right down the block from me. He was playing drums, and I knocked on his door, and his name was Richard DeRosa, who, by the way, is now one of the greatest composer arrangers at North Texas State, which is one of the greatest music colleges in the world. I just saw a video on him and I got chills when I saw him. And I went in and he let me watch him play. And he said, you need to get drum lessons. And I said, would you be my drum teacher? And he said, no, my dad, Clem DeRosa, a professional drummer, is my drum teacher. I'm learning. So I went back home and I got my neighbor to look up in the yellow pages, a drum teacher. And then he gave me the number and I called him, and his name was Ron Humphreys. I said, Ron, I'd like to learn how to play drums. And he goes, Gary, I appreciate it, but why? He says, because I saw Buddy Rich. He says, what do you know about Buddy Rich? And I knew a lot about Buddy Rich. So here's this 5-year-old giving a lesson on Buddy Rich. He says, okay, you have your mom call me back. And she calls me back and it's okay with her, I will give you drum lessons. So when we went in there, he said, okay, Gary, in order for you to, they didn't think I'd ever get past the first lesson. What we're going to do is we're going to say, oh, you need these big heavy sticks and you have to hit this rubber pad. You can't touch that drum set over there for 2 years. But you have to study every day. And if you don't study, you can't come anymore. And what he expected was what he got from other kids. Oh, never mind, I'm out. But I stayed. And I studied drums from the time I was 5 until the time I was 18 years old. And I was pretty well renowned as a pretty darn good drummer, but I didn't go to college for it. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. And this is where the art comes in. As much as I loved playing the drums, I was not talented in the drums. And I'll be even more specific. I didn't have great rhythm. I had great hands. I knew what I wanted to do. But if you don't have great rhythm, best not to be a drummer.
Right.
So I had to give it up, I thought. Or did I do something right during that time? Can I draw something from that experience? And what I drew from that experience, and I'm going to tie back to something else that we said, was I was a horrible, horrible reader. And now I go to college and I almost didn't make it out of high school because I just didn't apply myself. Now I'm in college and I have to learn how to read and I have to learn how to learn. And all I remembered was, how did I learn to read music playing the drums? Drummers don't read music. I did. And I used exactly the same things that they taught me in music to relearn how to learn and relearn how to read. And then I went to just play a tune. I just wanted to play one song. I missed it so bad for the college jazz ensemble. And they thought I was a rock drummer. That was bad. Jazz players hate rock drummers. And I sat there for 3 hours waiting for the opportunity to play one song, and they were going to leave without me. And I went, whoa. He said I could play. And I played that one song. They said, what do you want to play? I said, where's the music? Which, by the way, when you say where's the music to the drummer that's there, he gets nervous because he can't read the music.
Right.
And here's this guy, he's a freshman. So he gets the music. It's in a dusty little box and he puts it up. I had played that tune about 5 or 6 times already and played it pretty well, but they didn't know that. So I played it perfectly. And then the band instructor remember all those people playing? They're all music majors. They're out. They made them leave, except for me and the drummer. And he said, you're a trained musician. Why aren't you a music major? And I said, because I want to make some money in my life. And he said, I understand. He said, if you will be a part of every band, I will give you all the credit for your electives in music and it'll be an A.
Wow.
See? So all that time and effort, I loved it, but I wasn't great at it.
Right.
And I knew I couldn't go to college for music because I didn't want to play weddings and bar mitzvahs for the rest of my life. That, if you go back to what helped you learn and then apply that to later on in life, and the same thing holds true when you and I would have to facilitate somebody else's material. We had to internalize it. I use the same techniques I used to internalize music to internalize somebody else's music. In this case, it would be the training that they want to have done. Yeah. So that's some of those stories that I was telling you about.
Right, right. You know, I was on a red eye some years ago, and I'm sure you had your share of red eyes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you're in that, I'm not even sure if I was sleeping kind of mode. Where have I been?
It's horrible.
But it is. But I had this epiphany of the definition of wisdom. And I wrote it down. And it was one of the few times where, when I looked at it the next day, I went, I still like that. But wisdom to me is defined this way. It consists of three things. It consists of success, failure, and a conscious knowledge of the lessons learned from each. And what's beautiful about the stories you're telling and the book that we're anticipating is that you're not just telling stories. Stories are good. I kept a journal for years. I had this rule: I will never go back and change history. I will not look at my journal. What a terrible mistake. I finally woke up one day and went, I'm not learning anything from this journal. As I went back, not every story was brilliant, but as I started to look at stories, I went, well, there's a lesson in perspective. There's a lesson in defeat. There's a lesson in victory. And all of a sudden and that's how I began to assemble. And in this conversation with you, Gary, to me, it's what I really appreciate is every story seems to have a lesson. And that's where wisdom is coming from. So am I getting a taste of this book a little bit in terms of just not only just a storyteller, but a person who's leaning back and saying, there's more to the fireballs. Hang with me here. Okay.
Right.
Is that where we're going?
It's not even that. It's not just, it's more to the fireballs. If everyone just takes a second and goes back and looks at what they did early in life, not me or you or anyone else, anyone, and sees how it affected them, then you start to realize you lived an okay life. You're okay. Yeah. You did good. You might not be going out and buying a Rolls Royce Corniche convertible,
right?
But you did all right. And you should be proud of yourself, and you should be proud of where you came from and where you are today, instead of always thinking someone else has it better. And I'm really, right now, there's a real problem in the world. And the problem in the world is people see other people in images, whether it's social media or what it might be. And it's a false image. It's what they want you to see versus who they really are. It's not. So I get upset with my daughter when we're having dinner and everything you have to take a picture of everything. I just want to eat my food while it's hot.
Right.
But she wants people to see this gorgeous family dinner that we're having. And by the way, before we started the dinner, we were in a fight.
Right.
So
and
that's not
pictures
real.
Of that. Do we get some pictures of the fight too?
Yeah, that's not real. So
right.
Why don't we just do this? Why don't we play it? I'm not perfect. I'm not the greatest. I feel really good about myself, but I'm normal and you're normal. Let's look at what we did, where we are, and let's be proud of it so we can live the rest of our lives and say we meant something to somebody besides ourselves.
Right. And Gary, it's I have just so you know, I have over 2,000 pages of journal entries that I've taken. I started basically becoming what I call methodically observant maybe 20 years ago or so. I've learned, I thought I was doing it for my folks who were still alive. I thought I was doing it so the kids could see what I wouldn't have given to be able to see where my dad was thinking when he was in his wheelhouse. But I thought I was leaving a legacy, and I thought maybe if I was so blessed, I'd be able to lean back on a rocking chair someday and go, boy, I remember that one, and just kind of look. But the real value again was kind of going back, not the next day, let it lay down there for a little bit, but going back and learning from it. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make right now is I found myself recently encouraging more and more people to consider creating a journal. And one of my rules has always been, you can write one word, one sentence, one paragraph, one page. It doesn't matter. Just try and you're going to have to build a place for it the way we build a place to work out. We it's funny. We have certain precious moments where it's like, well, I always find time to work out. Well, good. I'm asking for a sliver of that to write. And when you say, but I don't know what to write about, when I don't know what I'm writing about, that's when I do my best writing. When I think I know what I can't wait. I got to get this one down. It's not really as fresh. It's not as good. It's like something came out of the oven, sitting around the counter for a little bit.
Can I add a rule in there?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. We put on a face for people sometimes. Sometimes you don't, in our life, oh my gosh, how many times have you gone and you haven't really felt that great, but it didn't make a difference because those people in front of you expected everything you had.
Oh, so I always feel good when I talk to an audience, Gary.
Yes.
Nothing's ever going wrong at my house. But continue.
Yes, right, exactly. Okay. Be brutally honest with yourself. The only person you need to be honest with is yourself. When you look in that mirror, know who's on that mirror, and it's not a perfect person. So when you're writing something down, when you're journaling something, be honest.
Yeah.
It's really what happens. So just now look at it and say, if you like it, let's do it some more. If you don't like it, what are you going to do to change it?
Right.
That's it. And it's just, it allows you to move on. It allows you to let that go. It
Right.
allows you to feel good about yourself, or say, I'm better than that. I don't know why I did that, but I did it. And I beat myself up for a little while, but geez Louise, the next time it comes up, I'm not going to do that.
But let's look at what you just did. So I'm going to bat back a rule for you. And right now, folks, we're getting into style a little bit. So I like where Gary's coming from, but these aren't hard, fast rules. Just like working out, the biggest thing about a workout is get to the gym. That's the hardest part. The rest will take care. Get in front of that laptop or that pad of paper. But what you just did unconsciously, I am brutally honest in my journals, but I have a rhythm where it doesn't always end up perfect. When I missed the flight, I bumped my knee. It's not a great day, but there's always hope at the end. I find that I always like to end it with, but I'll do better tomorrow. I don't care how badly I've been clobbered. At least I don't have to live this day again. I'll find something positive. And because what I don't want the journal to be is a collection of complaints, of whining. Yes, life happens, and I'm going to record it, as you said, Gary, honestly. But I do like to always kind of figure out what maybe, what something positive came about from this. What did I learn from it? Something, because I just didn't want it to be. I actually saw it in my head as your kids are going to read this. PG-13. I don't curse. I can curse, but I don't curse in my journal. And I'll be very honest, but I'll always end it with something positive. That's my rhythm.
So, as you said before, and what I was trying to describe,
yeah,
if something happens early or something happens in your life that you don't like, and you have that memory, and you say to yourself, okay, I'll do better next time. That's not like me. That's not like me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Versus
yeah.
that's just like
Yeah.
me, and you just did something wrong, bad. That's not like me. And then later on, you do the right thing. And then you tie back and say, see, I did this. You can say it to your kids. I did this. This is what I did.
Yeah.
But this is not how I live the rest of my life. I
Right.
didn't like the way it felt.
Right.
So I fixed it.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's broke, fix it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the honesty part you're talking about.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
honesty, but there's always, to me, I've lost some good deals. I've bombed in front of some rooms.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't end the journal with, and so I'm just a bombing guy. It's, I
Never.
learned, I fought hard, I didn't quit, and tomorrow is another day, and I'm going to learn from this, and here we go. There's going to be a tsunami of energy coming from me tomorrow. It's something positive, and so now it's unconscious. I tend to think that way. I write that way. I speak that way. And it's become a habit. So again, bit of a style piece, but as we're batting journals around, I just wanted to hear kind of the Jollis way of journaling.
No worries.
Okay. So last couple questions. The book, where is it on the timeline right now? I know you're digging in and you're writing. Where is it?
I finished it. What I'm doing is I'm going through it for the very last time. And as I go through it for the last time, I make some corrections. And I'm about halfway through. And every time I go through it and correct it, I then take what was black type and I make it red so I know where I ended. And sometimes I don't want to do it anymore. And so I put it aside for a day or two.
Yeah.
And then I go back and I do a few more chapters. So I should have it done by probably the beginning of the year. And at that time, then I'll take it to my, and by the way, I haven't shown it to any member of my family. And the reason is because whereas people can criticize me, what really hurts me is when my family criticizes me. So I want to make sure it's as good as it can be for me. And then I'll share it and I'll get it proofwritten and all the things that you did to get your book done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want you to focus on potentially losing one word for me. And it's not the end of the world. But let's take the word probably out, Gary. Let's have the book done by January 1. Done. Because done is perfect. That's not my quote. And from one author to another, I've met people who have fiddled with manuscripts for decades. Done is perfect. So I'm encouraging you to mentally process this as I won't probably be done at the beginning of the year. I'm going to be done at the beginning of the year, just so you know, when you find a publisher, there's going to be copy editing. There's going to be some shifting around. It's not cast in stone, but brother, let's be done by the beginning of the year. You'll be glad.
Okay, so I am now on a podcast with the great Rob Jallis. And I am committing to Rob Jallis and everybody else on this podcast that my book will be done by the beginning of the year.
Good.
How's that?
And I love it. And when we get that deal, and I'm going to help you with that deal. We're going to figure that out together. When we get that deal done, we'll have you back on again, and we'll promote that book, because it sounds like a wonderful book, and it's really needed, and it's going into so many really valuable areas. And I am just grateful for the time that you spent. You may be setting a record on Pocket Sized Pep Talks as having the longest podcast I've done, and I'm at my just coming close to 100 now. So you're record setting. But I always tell people when they ask me, how long am I going to be on? I mumble. Sometimes they hear me, as long as you're interesting. That's how long you'll be on. And I was actually mumbling in my head, I may have a part 1 and 2 of this one. But Gary, what a joy to not only catch up with you, but to learn from you and to hear where you're going and the things that you're doing. It's just inspiring to me. And I'm truly grateful for the time that you spent with us.
Oh, anytime. I appreciate you, and I'll always remember our time together.
Well, we'll do it again, the best that we can next time. Until then, everybody, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jallis.com.